The Royal Rumble is the second biggest event of 2021, and it's going to be even bigger. During our Wrestling Insider pay-per-view watch-along is the former Raw main eventer himself. John Cena Sr. will be in studio live during the big event. We'll watch the Royal Rumble, take some questions, sign some autographs, and make this year's Royal Rumble as interactive as it can be without you being there in person. Get ready for John Cena Sr. live during the Royal Rumble, January 31st. Boston Wrestling Sports and the MWF explodes into a new year of unknown with professional wrestling content galore, and we need you to join our family. Every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. after we review the previous night's Monday Night Raw, it's Wrestling Insiders at your house with the unpredictable WWE Hall of Famer, Mr. USA, Tony Atlas. Wednesday nights after WWE NXT and AEW at 10 p.m., you never know who's going to show up on Wrestling Insiders Special Edition. Every Thursday night at 10 p.m. after our NXT and Dynamite review, it's Marty Jannetty's No Holds Barred Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll journey through the 80s and 90s on Wrestling Insiders Party with Marty. Friday nights after the lights go down at the Thunderdome on SmackDown, it's John Cena Sr.'s Wrestling Insiders Fabulous Fridays. Plus, look for classic clips, bonus live episodes, pay-per-view watch-alongs, and more. If you want early, ad-free access to all of our Wrestling Insider talk shows, our acclaimed studio shoot interview DVD library, and to help keep wrestling legends working during the worst of times, for less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks, join our growing family at patreon.com/Boston Wrestling. Expect the unexpected in 2021.
This is Mick Foley.
This is Harley Race.
This is Shelton Benjamin.
This is Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
This is the Monster Abyss.
And this is Daniel Bryan.
This is JBL, and you're watching the MWF.
Be there live.
Wrestling fans around the corner, around the world, welcome to another installment of Wrestling Insider's Current Events. I'm Dan Mirade. We welcome you, all our fine friends, Slick Rick B, Maria Davis, Tina, H&M Limousine out of New Jersey, our great friends at the Gold Exchange down at Greensboro, North Carolina, Julian, Trigger Trey, J.A. Will. You never know who's going to pop in during a live premiere. And as always, again, it is a creature double feature on Thursdays, as at the top of the hour after our AEW and NXT review, we have one of our favorite talk shows of the week. We can't play favorites, as Quincy would say. We're going to have our Party with Marty Wrestling Insiders as Marty Jannetty returns this week talking about WWF's main event on NBC, February 1989. It was a huge night, setting up WrestleMania 5. He talks about a locker room fight between Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man Randy Savage. Marty Jannetty shares some inside thoughts on Miss Elizabeth. We talk Virgil. I unload on Jim the Anvil Neidhart and much more. As far as our talk shows go, don't forget that tomorrow night, after SmackDown, John Cena Sr. will be back shooting on Sports Illustrated. Sasha Banks, Cody Rhodes' grading of AEW, the AEW Impact Wrestling business alignment, and more. Don't forget that on Royal Rumble Sunday, January the 31st, we'll be having our Royal Rumble pay-per-view watch-along party, and John Cena Sr. will be with us live for that. Available for autographs, interaction with you guys for the very first time, live at night. That should be a lot of fun. Earlier this week, Tony Atlas was with us shooting on Mace and Otis, Keith Lee, and other big men from the main rosters being sent to the WWE Performance Center for some fine-tuning. We also had a great episode last night with the Warlord, talking about jumping ship from the NWA to the WWF back in the summer of 1988, while he was still one-third of the NWA six-man tag team champions. If you like WWF late 80s talk, you'll love this one. Warlord is really great. These episodes are available in the archives after tonight's shows. We have Tony, Marty, and John Cena Sr. all returning over the next few weeks to tape more Wrestling Insider episodes for your viewing pleasure. And we really need your help, especially if we want to keep the Wednesday night special edition episodes going. Over At our growing family on Patreon, don't forget you get that early ad-free access to all of our Wrestling Insider weekly in-studio shoot interview talk shows. You get access to our world-renowned studio shoot interview DVD collection as heard by millions on YouTube and millions more on The Howard Stern Show. You get some Patreon exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. And best of all, maybe most important, you're helping keep wrestling legends working during the worst of times right now for talents that are not signed to a WWE or AEW contract. Try us out for less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks over at patreon.com/Boston Wrestling. My guess is, as the numbers continue to grow, you're going to love it. Don't forget the eBay store is open 24/7. We've got rare, awesome wrestling merchandise for your man cave. The link to both the eBay store and Patreon can be found in the description box below. If you're watching the premiere on Thursday night, please give the show a big thumbs up. Share the link on social media with your wrestling friends. Help us grow the channel so we can get new eyeballs on what we're doing and bring you more great wrestling content. That is the goal. If you watched the shows last night, let us know what you thought of AEW and WWE NXT using a 1 to 10 scale, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. And ladies and gentlemen, it's that time. We're now joined by my co-host with socks that would be rated an 11, Southwestern Connecticut's own Mr. Matt Degnan. Whew, that was a hell of an opening, Matt. I know you had a visit with Isaac Yankem this afternoon that probably would not have gone well if we tried to have you do the opening at that point.
Yeah, it would have been Nicole talking the whole time.
Nicole? Now who is Nicole?
The dentist.
Oh, you're on a first-name basis with your dentist?
Yeah, Nicole and I believe Tim is the other one.
You're on a first-name basis with 2 dentists?
Yes.
Now, why is that? I'm curious.
I like first names. I don't like calling them
first names. All right.
Dentist or doctor. I feel like calling them by their first name is more friendly. Even though they had me do about a 3-page test before I went into the room, but forgot to study for that one.
Make sure you didn't have the virus, I guess.
The amount of questions that were on there, I mean, Jesus Christ.
Well, hopefully you didn't bring your dental floss with you.
No, they did.
To slow the spread. What's that?
They did give me a little gift bag when I left.
A gift bag? Now, what was in it? Corona-themed dental utilities?
Every time you go to the dentist, they give you a little bag, a toothbrush, toothpaste.
I have never been given that.
Really?
I've never been given floss or anything like that.
I like dental floss. I think it's kind of cool.
Well, I'm glad you were happy with the dental floss. Did you hear the good news, though, coming out of the great state of Massachusetts? I think this is going to put a smile on your face after your last few visits to the Commonwealth.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Well, Governor Baker is leaning back on some of the restrictions placed on activities and places here in the state. We will actually likely be able to actually go somewhere to eat again once we are done with these shoots.
Well, hopefully next it'll be Ned Lamont.
It'll be what?
Next it'll be Ned Lamont easing up on Connecticut, but I don't think that'll happen.
You don't think that's going to happen?
No, I don't like him, so.
Well, I'm happy that I can go to a movie past 7 o'clock at night again, and happy I don't feel like I have to dash like little Leo Rush to get into a restaurant by 9 to be seated. It'll be nice that some of these restrictions have come. I don't know why. Well, you know what? I'm not going to get into that whole conversation and that whole debate. I'm just happy about it. I thought you would be happy because I know you've kind of been restricted in some of your visits here to Massachusetts since November.
It's resulted in many McDonald's and Wendy's visits.
Yeah, many. And the good news is hopefully the restrictions will help Cecil the Lion's land party next Thursday, January the 28th. We've received many messages on Twitter and Facebook and even via email at bw@bostonwrestling.com looking to contact Cecil about the land party. He is in the process of trying to set up a server for it. So it's going to be a big night for people that play video games and understand what land parties are. But we are here to talk about the king of sports, professional wrestling. It was an explosive Wednesday night on January the 20th, which I got right because I have it written in front of me. Sir, I ask you, which show would you like to dissect first, AEW Dynamite or NXT?
AEW was first on tap.
Oh, boy. All right. Fire away, Chief.
AEW Dynamite opened up with a birthday party for Brody Lee's son, who they call -1 or -1. Not a great way to open up a nationally televised wrestling show with a birthday party for a little kid that no one really knows or cares about. Just save it for AEW Dark or before or after the show. The segment was interrupted by two idiots that no one else cares about, in Luther and Serpentico. Then TH2 came out to help the Chaos Project from the Dark Order. Then Adam Page came out to help the Dark Order. Then we went into TH2 and Chaos Project versus Dark Order right away for some reason. Just an overbooked mess of an opening that wasn't needed, and yet another segment from AEW that I didn't care about last night, but an awful opening to the show. Then in the match itself, Dark Order defeated TH2 and Chaos Project in an 8-man tag team match in the first bout of the night. Nothing much here. Quick tag match that I really didn't care for much. And of course, they had to give the kid his spots in with the kendo stick and the cake on the stage. After the match, John Silver asks Adam Page to join the Dark Order, but Page says no and walks off backstage. What did you think of the opening segment and the opening match of the night?
This is not meant to be disrespectful to Brody Lee, to his passing, to his son, to his family, but none of this belongs on a national Major League Wrestling television show. If AEW wanted to do this in private, if they wanted to do it behind the scenes, if they wanted to do it in front of no fans, I would say it's absolutely wonderful that they're being so nice to the kid. If it was something done without cameras rolling, I'd think it would be great. AEW's hot. It's in the right place with what they're trying to do, but turning these into weekly appearances is going to make people look at it negatively. Putting an 8-year-old in wrestling angles with several different heels now, it's going to come across almost like they're exploiting them. With that said, if there was a need or an effort to try and raise funds for Brody Lee's family, that's something I'd be one of the first people to raise my hand and say, what can we do to try and help? But AEW, I think, is going to be really taking good care of the Huber family. So that's not a great concern. I want to be sensitive to all considered, to all involved, but it's just a bad presentation at this point. Even the first time, I didn't want to say too much about what I really thought, and then there was the second time and the third time, and I just let him be part of the AEW family in a non-televised wrestling role. That's all I can really say about it. The kid deserves all the happiness in the world. He deserves all the comfort in the world. He deserves all the friendship and the love in the world right now. But putting him on wrestling TV shows every week, I can just see it going wrong in many different ways. On the flip side, the involvement of -1 might have been the best part of the whole thing. I mean, the match and the angle sucked. The Dark Order was boring, bland, and bad, both before and after Brody Lee. Dr. Luther, as we've seen recently, that thing with Snoop Dogg has had some of the worst offense I've seen on a national wrestling television show from an actual trained professional wrestler in eons. You waste Adam Page, who's a first-class talent, and garbage like this. It was just sad to me, that moonsault that Adam Page did off of the top rope to the floor, where the guys stood there. I mean, literally, you could count out loud. 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000, making everyone involved in the match, even his tag team partners, looking like idiots, waiting for him to do the moonsault. That drives me crazy. It's a complete waste when you probably could have had a pretty good match with Adam Page and one out of the other 7 that were involved in the match. I thought Adam Page was part of the Elite faction. I don't know. Sometimes it just moves too fast or there's no explanation. But this just turned into a farce. The music and the confetti, it just kept getting worse. Just when I think it couldn't get any worse, it kept getting worse. And I can't imagine the fans that switch back and forth to both shows would want to watch any of this. It was horrible, horrible.
It's almost like nothing went right in the first 20 minutes. But next up, we get yet another interview segment from Tony Schiavone, Sting, and TNT champion Darby Allin. Yet again, Tony doesn't do much. I really don't get why they bring him out for these interview segments when he never does anything. The segment was, of course, interrupted by Team Taz on the big screen about 2 minutes into the segment. Then Allen says, "Be careful what you wish for," after Taz says that they can take this fight to the streets, which I'm sure we'll get some type of street fight soon. Another short segment for Sting where he also doesn't do much. I guess he did a great job with it, I guess. Short and sweet. I'm still not really sure what they're trying to do, or maybe I just really don't care about it, or maybe both. This feud just isn't for me, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of Allen and Sting being a pairing together, but we'll have to see what the finished product is going to be, whatever that may be. I don't know what they're trying to do. I mean, I don't know. They haven't really explained much. I mean, it's been kind of a slow and boring build. I know we always talk about how things should be slowly built, but it seems like they take 2 steps forward and then 1 step back, and it's kind of never really went anywhere ever since Sting debuted. I mean,
or it doesn't need to be on TV every week if there isn't that much material to work with.
Yeah, I mean, ever since Sting debuted, I mean, they've really haven't done anything with it. It's been the same thing every single week. Tony Schiavone comes out and does nothing. He stands there with Sting, then Allen comes out, and then Team Taz comes out. They throw insults at each other and challenges at each other. Nothing happens, and Team Taz runs away. Then it's the same thing the next week. So maybe we'll get this street fight in 2 weeks or next week, whatever they're going to try to do, but I am not thrilled for it. But what did you think about this so-called interview segment?
You know, it's funny, when they came back from the commercial break and Tony Schiavone was standing in the middle of the ring, I said, I hope it's not another interview with Sting. And then look who came out. You know, it continues to snow in Jacksonville for Sting, which is a very nice ambiance for the man. This was actually better, I think, than some of the more recent ones. I like the fact that Taz and his posse wasn't castrated standing on the stage, then running away from Sting and Sting Jr. They were somewhere behind the scenes in the locker room or some facilities for their promo. I should tell you, in 2021, Taz is still one of the best promos in the business. He fires away. They tried to let Ricky Starks get a little shine in there by talking about streets and street fights and whatnot, but the microphone really wasn't too close to his mouth, so it bared repeating. I'm sure this is going to lead to an out-of-arena street fight, cinematic street fight, if you will, I would imagine, on the next pay-per-view. Will that entice fans to open the wallets and buy the pay-per-view? Do they want to see a cinematic Sting? That remains to be seen. I think at least for the first time, it should help the number. Going forward, who knows?
Cody Rhodes defeated Peter Avalon in the next match on Dynamite. Avalon, yet another person on the AEW roster that I don't think belongs on television. Jade Cargill came out in the middle of the match and tried to distract Cody, but Cody ended up winning anyway. I don't know why they did the distraction and then they did the low blow after. You know, usually when there's a distraction and a low blow of some sorts, it usually results in the other person winning, but then the match went on for another 10 minutes. So I don't know why you do a distraction with the low blow. And that was after Cody Rhodes hit the crossroads right in the beginning of the match. And then Avalon gets put down for about 10 seconds and then gets right back up and goes on for another 10 minutes in the match. Like it didn't start out that way. It's almost like the first 2 to 3 minutes of the match really meant nothing. But the match itself, for me, it was too long, and there was no need for Cody to struggle with this guy or sell too much for him. There were times where he would sell too much, and then they'd go 10 minutes into the match, and he would take a punch and not even move. So it's almost like the selling for Cody was kind of inconsistent in this match. He would go from selling nothing to just not even moving when this guy would hit a move on him. But I thought this match was too long for me, and there was too much going on for just an enhancement match that they did way too much with. But what did you think of Cody Rhodes getting the W?
Just when I thought I didn't like the first segment, I thought Peter Avalon was a librarian or something like that. I didn't know he was pretty now. I thought it would have been a fine, simple squash match if it was over in a minute, like it looked like it was going to be when Cody hit his finish. But this Jade woman shows up again. Cody didn't even attempt to pin Peter Avalon. He was so distracted by this woman walking out, which that's not Cody. That's just all of wrestling in general. Every time someone's music hits, they have to pause They have to stop. They can't turn into statues. They can't move because someone's music hits, and they're hundreds or dozens of feet away from them. They can't attempt to get a 3-second pinfall, which I don't understand, but it was what it was. Avalon recovered. He had the low blow, as you mentioned. I thought he hit a nice superplex. I'll give credit where credit is due, but Cody shouldn't even have been selling for this guy. Cody's, the cutter he tried to hit on this guy, it was far from the sharpest you'll ever see, pun intended. Avalon first reversed the figure 4, then the idiot tapped out before Cody was going to slap him in the face. I mean, what an embarrassment of a professional wrestling match that this guy taps out because he's going to be hit in the face in what is a presentation of simulated violence. If the character doesn't want to get physical and wrestle, what is the point of him even being on? It's just absurd to me how anyone with any common sense can sit there and think, oh, that's a good idea. It's a hell of a finish. It should have been finished because I didn't want to watch any more of the show at that point. I had enough.
Next up, Jon Moxley defeated Nick Comoroto. I wasn't a fan of this match following up Rhodes and Avalon. Just it didn't seem right to me when you had they were basically 2 enhancement matches back to back. I mean, Avalon, you don't see him on a weekly basis, and this guy, I believe, was making his Dynamite debut. So, I mean,
when was the last time Avalon was on Dynamite? Usually, isn't he sitting in the pretend crowd on a bed or something, or a hot? I don't know what it is.
But he's been on a few times. That's why I said he's not a weekly person on the show. But I'm not. It was 2 enhancement matches back to back, I think, didn't really go that way. It's almost like when we said on Tuesday in our Raw review, when they did the 2 interview segments within just a few segments of each other on Monday night. But I mean, I didn't really like these matches being back to back. I think these type of matches are kind of just the ones you put in the important segments. And I wasn't really tuned in to begin with from the get-go last night on AEW. But so far in this show, there was nothing There was nothing that I wanted to see. And even following this, they're just from 8 to 10 o'clock, there was nothing on AEW that I liked. But what did you think of Moxley versus Bruiser Brody last night?
To me, he looked more like a kind of a combination of Billy Jack Haynes and Hercules, when Hercules worked as Hercules Hernandez back in the mid-'80s in the WWF. But nonetheless, I would have liked to have seen the guy if they want to try and put him over, which they seem to, where they had QT and Dustin paying close attention to what he was doing. They should have given him a couple of wins on TV before putting him in the ring with Moxley, the former world champion. I never remembered seeing Comoroto, or however you say it, on Dynamite before. I thought he had a good look. I thought he had a good size. Then the graphic comes up, how they have the results, almost like a sports ticker, from the AEW doc, and it said the night before he lost to Scorpio Sky. So he lost to an enhancement guy, an undercard guy, the night before he works Moxley, and they have a graphic up about it in the middle of the match, and it just... Moxley sold too much for a guy that couldn't beat an undercard guy the night before, I guess is the best way to put it. I thought Moxley's promo after the match was strong. Yeah, I think Comoroto, or however you say it, physically has potential. What I saw was too limited last night to give. I'd have to talk with QT and Dustin as far as his long-term potential goes.
Yeah, that's one of the many downfalls of AEW is they just kind of throw people on TV. I mean, it would have also benefited Moxley a little bit if that guy had some push behind him and Moxley beat him. It would be good for both sides, but it really...
Even if he was coming off a win the night before, for the people that do watch AEW Doc, they could say, oh, Comoroto, he beat blah, blah, blah last night. Instead, no, I watched Doc, and he lost to Scorpio Sky, and now he's working Moxley. Geez, I wonder who's going to come away with the W in this one. So, see, those types of small things irritate me.
It's almost like every match last night, you kind of knew who was going to win. There wasn't many surprises. And then you look at NXT last night, and there was actually a few surprises over on the yellow and black brand. But, I mean...
Well, they're both kind of yellow and black, aren't they?
AEW is more of a gold, but...
Oh, I'm sorry.
But...
Mr. Sacco puts me in my place.
Yeah, and the AEW didn't have many surprises. I mean, they usually don't, because almost every Wednesday it's like Miro versus, like Chucky T or something like that. It's like, really, please. It's like nobody cares. It's too predictable and not that good to watch, to be honest. But in the next matchup, Private Party and Matt Hardy defeated Top Flight and Matt Sydal in a 6-man tag team match. After the match, Matt Hardy orders Private Party to attack their opponents, and they beat them up a little more. But another match that really never had any sync to it. Some spots were good, but for some reason it just wasn't for me. I'm not really a fan of this Matt Hardy that's in AEW. They haven't really done much with him, and as I said before, there's nothing in this show that really pleased me or made me want to keep watching. But what did you think of this 6-man tag team match?
This was a match I kind of wanted to like because of some of the people involved, for a variety of reasons. I guess Matt, since he's not broken anymore, is he now fixed, Matt Hardy? I don't know. I don't understand why he's not broken or woken or whatever he was in AEW. I'm glad AEW woke up and decided to stop with the childish bullshit with Matt Hardy that, again, failed everywhere except Impact. And look at where Impact is. But, again, there was some misspots in this one, and boy, and they kept coming. Again, I really wanted to like the match because of some of the guys involved, but it was not crisp at all. These guys need more regular work. I know you need to have them under contract, but, maybe they should steal Tony Atlas's idea from Wrestling Insiders this week when we discussed all the big guys being sent back to the Performance Center. Maybe AEW, to try and help the cause, should try and run some streamed, I don't know if you could call it a house show, but just more, give them more work because they need more work. I mean, the Private Party's offense, it was not a good night for them. I really like Top Flight. Airwolf is someone I like an awful lot, but it wasn't his best night at the office. It was just, there was a lot of flipping, there was a lot of flopping, but a lot of the small things didn't seem believable. Jim Ross even buried the referee, saying the referee can't control it because no one's going to listen. That's Jim Ross saying this is turning into a clusterfuck without him saying on an AEW show this is turning into a clusterfuck, which it was. It's unfortunate because I think the two tag teams have eons of potential, and I think Matt Sydal is very good too. I think Matt is a veteran. I'm sure he can still contribute in some ways, but I'd rather see this than broken, woken, whatever he is. But even as the agent that's taking too much money from Private Party, I'm not overly impressed. One man's opinion.
And that's basically how all the AEW tag team matches end up, is just tons of nonsense, people all over the ringside. You have people who aren't legal in the match in the ring doing their spots and stuff like that, and it just becomes, as you said, a big clusterfuck. But it's one of the many downfalls of AEW. But as we move on to another matchup of the night, now to the women's match, they usually have one women's match a night, and it's usually always at 9:30, right before the main event. Penelope Ford defeated Layla Hirsch. Not many notes from this. I'm glad. The only positive thing I could take away from this is that they finally put Penelope Ford on TV right before her big wedding in just about a month. So, I mean, at least they're trying to put her on TV to make people care about her wedding in just a few weeks. But, I mean, nothing really coming away from this match. I mean, they don't have much of a women's division, so we can't even talk about that and who's being built up for what and where we see these people going. So I don't know what notes I'd have on a women's division that doesn't really exist in AEW.
Well, again, as I talk about just when I think it can't get any worse, I have to say this, in all seriousness, this is probably the best use of Chuck Taylor since AEW started, having him be the butler for Miro and Kip Sabian. At least he's not out there wrestling like an imbecile with the Best Friends tag team. But you had two solid talents out there in Miro and Kip Sabian, and they're off to the side for a garbage women's match. As this unfolded, I thought to myself, is there anything good I can say about this? And they tried hard, but then it just kept getting worse as it continued. You had two men sell for what looked like a borderline dwarf doing a leap off of the top rope to the floor. And the finish sucked. I have no idea what Kip Sabian was trying to do. I don't know if Hirsch, because she's so small and dwarfish, she was too far from the rope. In the finish, was supposed to be, she was going to be on the rope. I was confused. I just wanted it to end. I wanted it to end. Nothing was done to make me care about the wedding. Nothing was done to enhance Sabian and Ford as a couple, other than the fact they walk around with each other. I can't even remember Penelope Ford speaking. I'm probably wrong about that. My attention is probably elsewhere. But, I mean, the finish sucked. I couldn't understand what I was seeing. It was almost like Sabian was trying to pull the short woman towards the rope, is how it looked to me. I just wanted it to end. Luckily, it did. I did like how Miro belittled Taylor after the match in the post-match promo, but it certainly was not enough to make up for a match that went way too long.
Again, it's almost every single segment and match last night. It's just one downfall after another that AEW continues to do. Messed up spots, too long of matches, belittling people who don't need to be belittled, and awful storylines, and just one of the many negatives of last night's show. But as we move into the main event, where we saw Chris Jericho and MJF defeat Santana and Ortiz and Sammy Guevara and Jake Hager in a triple threat tag team match, Jericho and MJF got a good old roll-up for the W last night to end the show. I mean, whatever, but triple threat tag team main event that I didn't expect much from, and we didn't get much out of it. What did you think of the main event to close out Dynamite last night?
We closed it out all right. It wasn't the worst match I've ever seen, but it was just another one that was all over the place. And Jim Ross was taking shots at the referee for all the illegal entrants. It was too much. It was overdone. The psychology behind it was nil. You couldn't keep track of all the illegal entrants. You didn't know who was who, what was what. Jericho tried to use the baseball bat, and his bodyguard that he brought to AEW, Hager, flattened him. Wardlow slid MJF his little ring. Hager flattened him. What can you say? I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, they did a big segment that they built up over the course of a week. Will the inner circle stay together? And they decided to stay together. And now ever since they had that segment, it seems like all they do is wrestle each other every week now. How do you make sense out of bullshit like that? I don't know.
As we move into our grades now of AEW, not a pretty show. I mean, I still think I'm being generous with the grade I'm giving, and I gave it a 3. I mean, there was nothing on this show I wanted to see. I could maybe even go down to a 2. It was that bad. I mean, even the in-ring wrestling didn't even save the show. I know sometimes we talk about on WWE, the show's not that great, but the in-ring work is so good to the point where we almost put our grade a little bit higher because the bell-to-bell work is good. But even the bell-to-bell work last night was nothing to rave about, and it didn't save the show enough to even just bump it up a little. So, I mean, I gave it a 3, and I still think enough talking into could get me down to a 2. But what did you grade AEW from last night?
Well, I think a couple of the better segments were ones that you didn't mention. The Young Bucks at Kenny Omega's home when they had that confrontation with Don Callis. I actually thought that was pretty good. I thought Callis was a pretty effective promo. It was amazing that WWF missed the boat on him back in the late 90s when they stole my good friend the Jackal's name the day after a CWA Tony Rumble event in Wallingford, Connecticut. The Good Brothers attacked Penta in the back with Omega. I didn't think that was all that bad. But overall, I was lower than you. I gave it a 2 out of 10 just because of the efforts of the talent and Jim Ross. I just wanted it to end. It was atrocious. It was horrible. It shouldn't even have been on Dark, never mind Light, or never mind Dynamite. It was just awful.
Yeah, I mean, I could have moved it down to a 2, but I guess I don't want to be too rude on them, but
I don't care about being rude. I care about being honest. It was a 2. It might have been generous. It was terrible. There was nothing that they built out of that show that I wanted to say. They advanced the Sting thing a little bit towards a match, but I mean, by the time that show was over, there were so many horrid segments, you could barely remember that Sting was even on. What are the news and notes, please? I need to know what else I missed.
Oh, there's no news or notes
There's
from
nothing.
this garbage.
All right,
Just
good.
more garbage. That's it.
All right then, wrestling fans. You heard our thoughts on AEW Dynamite. If you're watching on the Thursday night premiere at 9, between a 1 and a 10, what did you think? Let us know. We'll be back after this brief timeout when we run down WWE NXT. Stand by. Wrestling fans, welcome back to Wrestling Insider's Current Events, where we break down the AEW Dynamite and WWE NXT January 20th, 2021 episodes. I'm Dan Mirade, along with Southwestern Connecticut Socko himself, Matt Degnan. We just brutalized AEW Dynamite. Now it's time for a little NXT.
NXT opened up with the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic first round match where Kushida and Leon Ruff defeated Johnny Gargano and Austin Theory. To me, it was a little bit of an upset. I expected Gargano and Theory to win, but we got Kushida and Ruff moving on in the tournament. What did you think of this? I don't know if you think it's an upset, but what did you think of the opening match?
Well, I have to say, as much as I hate Beth Phoenix commentary, at least she's back physically in the building after taking 10 months off to do it from home, while every other employee, is in the building working during coronavirus time. So it was good that Beth showed up. I like the match. Kushida is turning into one of my NXT favorites. I hate, as I've noted again, and I'm going to continue to say it every time, they took the ultra over Johnny Gargano as a babyface and have turned him into an imbecile heel, and they're attaching someone in Austin Theory that has, future WrestleMania main event potential, in my opinion. I think that's a bad idea. It turns it into sports entertainment comedy, and this should be the one show that doesn't have that type of nonsense on it. Then again, compared to what was on AEW to open the show, this was like the Hart Foundation and the British Bulldogs from back in 1986. So it was a good tag team match. I don't like the execution of Gargano in Theory, and Leon Ruff is what he is.
Next up, we got Karrion Kross defeating Ashante Adonis. Nothing much to this one, quick and to the point, and I don't know what else you could say about this. I mean, how long was this match? 2 minutes? I mean, what did you think of Kross and Adonis?
It was an effective enhancement win over Ashante. Don't call me Adrian Adonis. Kross is going to be going places in WWE as time goes on. At the same time, I see potential in Adonis. I haven't seen enough of him yet, maybe to exactly know what that is, but there's talent in him, and it's going to be interesting to see where his career goes. This match is exactly what it should have been. It was short, sweet, got Kross over as a dangerous individual.
Another Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic first round match happened next, where Lucha House Party defeated Imperium. After the match, Alexander Wolf returned and was on stage and had a little stare down with the rest of Imperium, who he is a group with. They did their little signature hand motion, and that was that. It was an okay match. I thought it was sloppy, though. I don't know what you thought about the match, but I thought it was not as good as I thought it was going to be. It was really, really sloppy, in my opinion. But this was one I really didn't know who was going to win. I could have seen Lucha House Party go over, and I also could have seen Imperium get the win. But I'm not too shocked to see Lucha House Party win, since they've been on almost every single brand the past month or so, and they've gotten a couple wins under their belt lately. So not too shocked. But what did you think of this first round matchup?
It was fine, I guess is the best way to put it. I wouldn't necessarily call it good. I didn't think it was all that bad. I think it would have been kind of an embarrassment if Lucha House Party lost in the first round in the NXT Tag Team Tournament where they were on the main brand. But the match was fine.
Next up, Beth Phoenix gave a speech and announced all the trailblazing women who wrestled in NXT, which is basically every women's champion that they've had. She didn't really get much reaction from the crowd there, so that's really all you got to know about this part of the show. They had the women on stage from the tournament for the Women's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, even though there's about 8 teams in it, and they're all random. Some of them you've never even seen on TV before. Some of them have barely done anything in NXT, and even some of the men's tag teams that they have this year for the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic are kind of thrown together and not really needed. But I just think once you start throwing teams together, it doesn't feel the same as they've done in the past.
Right.
So these two tournaments, I don't care about. They don't hold much weight, and I'm sure all the fans in the future will go, oh, well, he won the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic in 2021, and I guarantee nobody will care about it. But what did you think about Beth Phoenix's big return in her speech?
I was not happy to see. I think it's only right that Beth is there in person. Like I said, every other hardworking man and woman, whether they be announcers, wrestlers, production people, they're all at the venue. If she wants to get the paycheck every week, I think she should be there too. As far as her speech goes, it's just more PC bullshit. I don't think that there are fans that want to see this tag team tournament because, as you noted, there are no tag teams that have been built up for it. But, it's another great first for these women. Oh, the only problem is, again, most fans don't want to see it, but they're polite enough to play along. And that was my thought on Beth's speech. I hope Beth decides to find other endeavors in life that don't involve her doing wrestling commentary. She's a very nice lady.
We got our first match of the Women's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic next. Casey Catanzaro and Caden Carter defeated Toni Storm and Mercedes Martinez. This was another upset for me, but I thought it was a good ending to the match from Casey. She hit a good 450 moonsault, senton from the top rope because her boyfriend is Ricochet, so kind of mirrored what he does in his finishing move. But I thought it was kind of cool to see. You don't usually see women hitting moves like that, so I thought it was kind of cool to watch. But yeah, another upset on NXT from last night. Catanzaro and Carter are expected to be turned heel soon, so we'll see where that goes, but I'm sure it'll turn into nothing. But what did you think of this women's tag team match?
I actually like Toni Storm and Mercedes Martinez, believe it or not, of the women that they have down there in NXT. I kind of thought it was a bit of an upset, as you noted. Maybe they have bigger plans for the Carter and Catanzaro, whatever, however you say it, that fine duo. It could have been a lot worse. We've seen there was a lot worse on AEW with their women's match, so take it at that.
Bronson Reed defeated Tyler Rust in the next matchup of the night. A pretty one-sided match here that didn't really have much to it. It seemed like Tyler Rust only got in about few moves, but again, another short match. Kind of enhancement-like, but I'm excited to see where Bronson Reed goes because, as we always note, there's not many big men in WWE anymore. And even in NXT, if you look at how many big guys they have down there, they don't have too many of them. So I'm excited to see where Reed goes, and I think Rust, he still needs a little bit of work, but it was an expected outcome. But what did you think of Reed and Russ?
I knew a man named Russ that used to love to call people big guy, believe it or not. But that was back in 95 and a different story for a different time. Again, this was presented exactly as it should have been. Big Bronson gets the win. He's a guy right now that has some momentum. He's the guy right now with more potential of the two, even though Rust is kind of a relative newcomer to NXT. It was good. It was fine.
Santos Escobar cut a promo saying he has beaten everyone in NXT and that he is the champion of champions. It was then, of course, interrupted by Gran Metalik and Lince Dorado, where they were beat up by Legado del Fantasma. And then Kurt Stallion came out to save them for some reason. I don't like when they do these saves of people that have nothing to do with these feuds. I don't know if I don't watch 205 Live, so maybe someone in the comments could say something about it. But
maybe we should start doing 205 Live reviews.
I'm perfectly fine. But I don't know if it has something to do with 205 Live and something that's going on in the purple brand of WWE. But even if they've done it on 205 Live, they haven't done it on NXT. So even if it's been done over there on Friday nights after SmackDown, they'd have to do some of it on Wednesday nights because not everybody watches or anybody at all watches 205
That's
Live.
Very safe to say.
But what did you think of I thought the promo was good, but I thought the stuff that happened after, it's okay to set up their tag team match in the tournament next week or whenever it's going to be, but to add in Kurt Stallion, really don't care about him. But what did you think?
They're trying with Escobar. I get that. I think and again, I don't even know if it exists, but if there is this issue between him and Stallion from 205 Live, where their video packages are so good, I think they should have put together a video package to highlight some of the issues between Stallion and Escobar, and maybe they will do so after the fact, maybe next week. Maybe the announcers could have explained it if there is some kind of a history between the two. But I'm going to say it before. I know I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. Every time I see this faction come out, I wish they would let Wild go back to being DJZ, where Impact is so loose on letting guys use gimmicks that they've used in that company. He was so much more over. He was so much more colorful. He was so much more interesting as DJZ. I think he'd add a lot to the Cruiserweight division. I think he'd add a lot to NXT. I don't know how much he's adding as Wild, but I'm not wild about it. Wink, wink.
Timothy Thatcher defeated Tommaso Ciampa in the Fight Pit and the main event of NXT. This Fight Pit match to me wasn't as good as the last one. It didn't seem to have much to it either. I thought it was an okay main event to the show, but for me, I expected more out of it. But what did you think of the main event to close off NXT?
I thought it was good. I thought it was different, unlike the main event on AEW that was different but had zero common sense behind it. Yeah, Thatcher is, turning into Mr. Fight Pit like Triple H was Mr. Hell in the Cell for a while. It appears this is going to be his type of match, and as long as it isn't overdone, maybe more than once or even twice a year, I guess it's not that bad of a thing. I like that Thatcher kind of has a throwback type look. A little surprised to see Tommaso do the job, where they haven't had much sizzle behind the former Millennium Wrestling Federation television champion in quite some time, but in a match like that, both guys can't win, and they decided Thatcher was the guy to go with in the Fight Pit. Does it continue the feud into NXT TakeOver on Valentine's night? I have no idea.
We'll get into our grades now of NXT, a show that I thought really wasn't great and it wasn't really horrible. I gave it a 5 out of 10. I was kind of in the middle. I mean, maybe could bump it up to a 6, but I kind of settled at a 5. But what did you think overall about NXT last night?
I gave it, believe it or not, a 7 out of 10. There was almost nothing to dislike about the show, but there was nothing that I would say was pay-per-view quality, quote-unquote, to give it a really high tier, 8, 9, or a 10. I gave it a 7. I thought it was very watchable. I thought it had a good flow. Other than old Beth, there really wasn't much negative I could say at all about the show. I thought it was watchable and pretty good. It made sense. It had logic. It continued to build things. It continued to build wrestlers. It built feuds. You had somewhat of a climax in the main event, which is what a good main event should be. Like I said, I don't know if they plan to continue the Thatcher and Tommaso angle or not, but overall, it was a good night at the office compared to the atrocity on TNT.
Since we were just talking about it, it just popped up on my phone, but Brian Cage and Ricky Starks are facing Sting and Darby Allin in a street fight at AEW Revolution.
Much as I thought. I couldn't imagine they'd put that on free television.
But that pay-per-view is expected to be on a Sunday now.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm disappointed in that. I like the Saturday night pay-per-views as I've noted.
It's supposed to be March 7th now. So.
Oh, they changed the date too?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. That thing I needed to text you about, I'm going to text you about because it involves that weekend.
Okay. But did you want to guess the viewership between the Wednesday night?
I'll say 850 AEW, 725 NXT. I think it was a closer week.
You were close with AEW. They had 854,000.
Wow, really close.
In NXT, they had 659,000. So about 200,000.
Still within that 100,000 range that I usually am. But really, I thought AEW, I'm sorry, I thought NXT might get a little bit of a bump out of the Fight Pit.
And it's just, and AEW tripled them almost in the demos. I just don't know how AEW wins every week, and their shows are just awful. I mean, I think last week we shit on AEW too. The thing that I always say is the thing that attracts people, that magnet for AEW, is just that it's different from WWE. It doesn't have the same stuff all the time. And I just think that's why a lot of wrestling fans will gravitate over to AEW rather than NXT, just for that difference of the feel of the night. And I know both of us have said that too, for the reason why that we usually watch NXT or AEW first and then NXT after. But
well, there's several ways you can look at it. I like AEW. I think they have a better ambiance than NXT. I think it's different than all of the WWE brands. I think they have the best commentary team in all of wrestling. I'm not a huge fan of the guy with the mask. I was very happy when he wasn't on. I think that I lost my train of thought there for a second because I had 4 little bullet points in my brain and I only shot 3 of them. But I'm shooting blanks. The story of my life. We'll have to talk to Linda about that. But it just shows that there are some people that enjoy the hokiness that you see on AEW sometimes. It's a shame that with the things that AEW does right, it gets watered down by the garbage sometimes. And it's amazing that a show that has some horrid segments that you see sometimes is on a show that has some exceptional matches with some exceptional athletes sometimes. But you got to remember this, and I had this conversation, I think it was with John Cena Sr. on one of our Wrestling Insider Fabulous Friday episodes. For all the knocks that you give AEW, and sometimes for even all the praise that it gets, you have to remember that this is a company that is only a little over a year old. There is a learning curve for these people. If I was starting up AEW or was a consultant, are there different people I might have suggested to bring in to help launch it? Absolutely. Are there people out there now that I think could help behind the scenes in different ways to enhance the product? Absolutely. But I think for a company, again, that's just over maybe just about a year and a half since Dynamite debuted on television, you have to give them all the praise in the world for that. They're hardworking people, hardworking athletes. Not every week is going to be a home run. We've said that before. The Yankees are not going to win 162 games in a season. AEW Dynamite is not going to have 52 5-star episodes each year. I know there are some fans that might like that to happen. It's just not the nature of the beast. It's not going to happen. But there have been a couple lately that have been really, really, really bad. You're giving this deep thought.
I gave my thoughts. You're passing it back.
Are there any news and notes coming out of NXT?
No.
Nothing. All right. Well, we got news and notes galore, folks. We got John Cena Sr., we got Tony Atlas, we got Marty Jannetty coming back to this fine studio over the next few weeks. We have not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 weekly in-studio shoot interviews, high quality, not that garbage you see on Zoom where people's heads are at different angles, and the audio sometimes lousy, and the picture is sometimes lousy, and the graphics are sometimes lousy. We're in studio, baby, on Wrestling Insiders. That's why I think so many fans have gravitated to what we do and love what we do. What we need from you is to tell your friends about it. Go on these Facebook wrestling groups. Anything you can do to let wrestling fans know that we exist and to try it out is a huge help. I continue to believe, as a man that does not have much of an ego, there are millions of wrestling fans that have absolutely zero idea we exist, but I believe once they find us, I think they're going to love us, as shown by the tremendous growth from 2020 into 2021 now. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of our hard work. There is more hard work on the horizon. There are more ideas on the horizon. We certainly need more help. I wish I had my buddy Mr. Sacco up here with me every day. I can't. I'm lucky to get him up here now for the pay-per-views and the special guests. He's a busy man down there trying to coordinate, the top drawer on his bureau. Life is what it is. But we got some exciting things on tap. But if you guys, especially if you want to keep the Wednesday night Wrestling Insider Special Edition going, we got to get more fans active on the Patreon. The guys and girls that are on the Patreon now, you rock. We try and give you as much as we can. We want to give you more exclusives. But just trying to do what we're doing right now with just Johnny, Tony, and Marty, we're walking the tightrope. To do more than that, We really need a boost. We love you guys. We hate to come on here and sound like we're trying to beg and plead for money. That's not what I want this to be. Because, again, there are plenty of things you can do at no cost. If you give the show a thumbs up, it costs you absolutely nothing other than a split second of your time. It lets YouTube know you're enjoying it, and it gets YouTube to showcase our videos to fans that may not have seen us before. If you subscribe to the channel on YouTube, it's free. That costs nothing. If you share it with your friends on Facebook, on Twitter. I know there are wrestling Reddit groups and Facebook groups, wrestling websites. If you share it with those folks, again, you're getting the word out to more people. Again, the more people that try us out, not everybody's going to love us. We're not for everybody. But I think there are enough fans out there that can really continue to boost these numbers across the board and make what we want to do a reality. My ultimate goal, as I've said before, is in addition to TV show review podcasts, in addition to pay-per-view watch-alongs, in addition to flashback videos and history videos, I would like to have a weekly talk show 7 nights a week with a featured superstar and just try and grow it from there. I believe it can be done, but it's up to you. So again, patreon.com/Boston Wrestling. For less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks, you can help keep Wrestling Legends working, along with all the great perks, some of the Patreon-exclusive videos, the early ad-free access to our Wrestling Insider in-studio talk shows, the acclaimed Studio Shoot Interview DVD library that's been seen by millions on YouTube and millions more on The Howard Stern Show, all at your fingertips for a couple of bucks, and you help keep the Wrestling Legends working. Mr. Degnan, do we have anything to add to that?
I think you you touched every base as we're on the
little touching and feeling going on. Well, the good news is, folks, you have right now, if you have time, you want to get a beverage, a little snack. If you want to use the restroom at 10 p.m., you know what time it is, Socko, and you better do the blasting tonight, baby, because this is a hot one. This is a long one tonight.
Is this that 2-hour one?
I don't think it's 2 hours, but it's lengthy. This is Wrestling Insider's Party with Marty Jannetty. We break down WWF Main Event 1989. It was the big, not the Saturday night's main event, the main event, which was the one primetime special Friday night at 8 p.m. given to them by NBC in 1989 to help set up the WrestleMania 5 main event. One of the more famous nights of the 1980s in the WWF. We talk about a Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage locker room fight. We talk about Marty's insider thoughts on Miss Elizabeth, Virgil, of all people. I shoot on Jim the Anvil Knight. They even get me going on this one, Mateo. I don't know if you remember my thoughts on old Jim, but the guns were ablazing when it came to Jim Neidhart.
Oh, I know that story.
All right, well, so it's an interesting episode, folks. We hope you like it. We hope you enjoy it as much as you like this one. Again, tell a friend, share the links, and we'll see you at 10 o'clock. For Matt Degnan, I'm Dan Mirade. We'll see you in a few minutes on the flip side. Good night. The World Wrestling Federation was live at the Yellowstone Metro in Billings, Montana, Tuesday, January the 21st, 1986, where the WWF had to use the Billings Amateur Boxing Association ring as the wrestling ring never showed up. In the opening contest, Hercules beat S.D. Jones. King Tonga with the win over Barry O. Adrian Adonis defeated George Wells. The British Bulldogs victorious over the Hart Foundation. King Kong Bundy beat Lanny Poffo. And in the main event, WWF Intercontinental Champion Tito Santana retained the title over Jesse the Body Ventura via countout. If you were in Billings Live, share your memories in the comment section below. Use the links in the description box to keep Wrestling Legends working in our eBay store and on our acclaimed Patreon streaming service so we can bring you more interactive superstar shoot interviews to relive the good old days of professional wrestling. Check it out. Boston Wrestling Sports in the MWF explodes into a new year with professional wrestling content galore and need you to join our family. Every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. after our Monday Night Raw review, it's Wrestling Insiders at your house with WWE Hall of Famer Mr. USA Tony Atlas. Wednesday nights at 10 p.m. after NXT and AEW, join rotating legends on Wrestling Insiders Special Edition. Every Thursday night at 10 p.m. after our NXT and Dynamite review, it's Marty Jannetty's no-holds-barred sex, drugs, and rock and roll journey on Wrestling Insider's Party with Marty. Friday night after SmackDown, don't miss John Cena Sr.'s Wrestling Insider's Fabulous Fridays. Plus, look for classic clips, history videos, bonus live episodes, pay-per-view watch-alongs, and more. For less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks, get early ad-free access to our Wrestling Insider talk shows, our acclaimed studio shoot interview DVD library, and help keep wrestling legends working during the worst of times. Join our growing family at patreon.com/Boston Wrestling. Expect the unexpected in 2021.